It's spring, and it's time to fish. This year, TakeMeFishing.org wants everyone to experience their first catch. Whether it's the first of the day, first of the season, or first of a lifetime, show it with hashtag #FirstCatch. Adventure is waiting to be caught.
National League Central rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss, he struck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Golic. Thanks for downloading the podcast. Here's what we got for you. NBA playoffs. We're talking about the seeding, plus Hernandez reaction. Michelle Roberts, executive director of the NBAPA, on player safety and one-and-dones. Charles Barkley joins us, as well as Rockets head coach Kevin McHale.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Well, a good Thursday morning to you here on Mike and Mike. Ryan Ruocco in for Greeny alongside Golic. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Good morning, Golic.
Good morning, Mr. Ruocco. How are you this fine morning?
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm delightful.
Are you?
Yeah. What a crazy night
that was
in the NBA. Just absolutely ridiculous. Yesterday was an insane sports day in general and news-wise as well. We're going to have you covered wall-to-wall when it comes to Aaron Hernandez this morning.
Right.
Roger Cossack, 6:30 Eastern, is going to join us. We'll chat with Dan Wetzel. His column on the Aaron Hernandez trial was just fantastic. Ryan Smith of ABC News. Every angle of what happened with Aaron Hernandez yesterday we will have covered. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who were waking up.
Well, yeah. There was a whole lot going on in the NBA as far as seeding was concerned, and then who were the final spots were going to be in the eighth slot for the Eastern and Western Conference. And to me, it comes down to, or you look at the scenarios, and you had one team win it with an and another team win it with an or. You know where I'm going? And or.
I do.
I'm going to have to explain this, aren't I?
No.
So,
You're not going to have to. With the Nets needed an and.
Yeah, here's the deal. Like, you'd rather have an or than an and.
Right.
When you're going into that, if there's an and, that means you have to do something and something else has to happen.
Right.
So you got to watch. If you have an or, you're in better shape. This can happen or this can happen. That's where the Pelicans were in last night.
Why did you think you didn't think I could follow along with you on this?
Listen, after the last couple of days, and we're going to get into a little more, you pulling out a compact in a break to get yourself, ready for the next segment, and Stephen A. bringing up the fact that you took a girl on a date and you walked 100 blocks.
Yeah.
I still have a lot of questions about you. I thought I'd have more answers by this week.
Right, it's fourth day in a row together.
Yeah, I got way more questions. But the questions, to your point again, the and the or, they were answered last night. The Nets get the and the Pelicans don't need the or because they took care of their business. And there's your last spots. The Nets in the eighth slot in the East and the Pelicans the eighth slot in the West.
And I actually, those are the two scenarios I didn't think would happen.
Me too. Never thought. I thought we'd be coming in this morning. I thought it would be Pacers.
Yep.
As the eighth slot, and I thought Oklahoma City, which of the games that went on last night, we said that was the lock of lock. And of course, they scored the most points they scored in the game all season.
Right.
Russell Westbrook had 34
in the first half.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they blew out Minnesota, which is what everybody thought would happen. But they needed the Pelicans to lose as well, and that didn't happen.
And I thought that the Pacers would end up going because they had won 6 in a row.
Right. They were hot.
They're hot. They're playing good basketball. They'd had some good wins recently. They beat the Thunder in a game a couple days ago that the Thunder had to win. And then they beat Washington in double overtime. But, Memphis, they ended up playing for something in that second half because the Spurs lost to the Pelicans. So Memphis was able to then win the 5 seed and have home court advantage in the first round. And they played without Mike Conley and without Tony Allen. So I'm thinking, Indiana probably gets in. And the Nets were having their own struggles with Orlando. They were down 9 in the third quarter. But Brooklyn ends up blowing out Orlando. And then Indiana loses that game. And we end up getting the 2 8 seeds that we weren't expecting. And Golic, I'm left thinking more than anything else, good on Anthony Davis and good on New Orleans. To go in there, San Antonio was trying to win that game last
night. Yeah, they were.
Night.
San Antonio again. So let's make this, because it can get very confusing.
Oh, my gosh.
Let's make it as simple as possible. As Ryan said, the Nets beat Orlando, and then they needed an Indiana loss. And Indiana was playing Memphis. So that happens. Memphis plays a good game. The two big men from those two of the teams we're talking about were huge. You mentioned Anthony Davis, 31-13, and they won over the Spurs. Marc Gasol, 33-13 in the win over the Pacers. So that knocks the Pacers out, this hot team, which now, you know the old, well, they finished the season strong and that'll springboard it into next year. No, that doesn't work here. You were hot, now you get to sit, and cool down. So they're done. Nets are in. And then it was, Oklahoma City had to see the Pelicans lose, and they didn't, so they're out. So your leading scorer this year, Russell Westbrook, which we'll get into, he's the 10th NBA leading scorer for his team not to make the playoffs. So we'll get into that some. And then you had the seeding within. One of the most interesting was San Antonio. Could have been as high as the 2 and as low as the 6. They lose to the Pelicans. And now they're the 6.
Right.
So they go from could be the 2 playing the 7 in Dallas. Now they're the 6 playing the 3 in the Clippers. Either way, San Antonio's okay and they're favored, and I think they're going to win. But there was a lot of jumbling that went on last night.
And going into last night, I thought Tim Legler made a great point when he was on with us yesterday. He said, look, you could have questions about San Antonio's desire to win games late in the season when it comes to seeding, except – that's what they've been playing for these last few weeks, and they've won 11 in a row. So, yeah, they clearly are trying to get that 2 seed, and, yeah, they are going to play hard tonight. And for anybody who watched that game or listened to it here on ESPN Radio, you know that San Antonio was going all out. Tim Duncan's in that game in the final moments. And for Anthony Davis to do what he did on that stage last night, getting that win, Golic, we know he's going to be one of the premier faces of this league moving forward. We know he's going to be one of the league's biggest stars. But I was overwhelmed by what he was able to do last night in that spot against the defending champions when they wanted that game badly. And the Pelicans, who haven't been in this spot before,
right.
This is a new experience for them. They were able to step up to the plate and to enter and exit with exactly what they came for. I was very impressed by their ability to clinch the 8th spot.
Well, and now so we see they're the one team I look at and say, okay, where can we go? Because there's a couple of questions with them, and we have obviously a lot of playoff talk to do because, remember, the first round lasts right around 8 months. So we've got a lot of time. I think it starts in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
You want to give these guys some off time.
That's right.
But to me, New Orleans is intriguing for a lot of reasons. The main one is Anthony Davis. First, they get in the playoffs, so let's see what now they can do. And then you're talking about Anthony Davis and what he was able to do. He already now has 500 blocks in his career. Is he that next guy? Because you know what everybody's wondering. Is he going to be in New Orleans?
Right.
You know, of these free agent movement, and I don't mean it because of markets, because I don't think that matters anymore, but the way these guys get together, maybe he'll get more guys to come down there, or I'm sure that's in the New Orleans Pelicans. They want to enjoy this now. But they see what's going on in other places. So can we hold on to our guy? Because Anthony Davis, correct, you give me your opinion on this, but this is mine. As soon as we stop saying, well, if you started a team today, the first person you select is LeBron James, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as that changes, it's going to be Anthony Davis.
Yes.
He's going to, and I think the NBA is in a great place right now. I think I enjoy watching it. I think there are great players. But I think the next guy that you're going to say I'd start a team with after you're done saying LeBron, whenever he hits that age where you say, okay, he's on the other side now, it's going to be Anthony Davis because he is unbelievable to watch. Unbelievable running the floor, unbelievable scoring, unbelievable defense. He's amazing.
And some people would say, well, what about Steph Curry? He's going to be the MVP. He's still young. Yep. Or what about a James Harden? Well, here's the thing. Anthony Davis is a more unique asset than those guys. Anthony Davis is a game changer on the defensive end, and he has become so polished so quickly on the offensive end, and he still has more room to grow, and he's already a guy who, in a must-win situation, can put up 31 and 13 like he did last night. He is that guy, Golic, because how many guys do you see who can play the 4 or the 5, can step out, hit, long jumpers, can dominate in on the post offensively, and can be that presence in the paint and that rim protector that Anthony Davis is. A great point guard in today's NBA. Now, look, Steph Curry is a unique asset. I don't want to make it like he's not.
Right.
But a great point guard is a lot easier to find than a big who does what Anthony Davis
does.
Yeah.
I could not agree more. And And you want to talk, people say, oh, the season's too long, whether it's 82 games, you talk about 162 for baseball, too long, do early games mean anything? Well, you want to know what one game can mean? What one game can mean?
This is amazing.
You go back to February, Oklahoma City and New Orleans ended up with the exact same record, and the Pelicans had the tiebreaker. And one of the reasons they had the tiebreaker was February 6th. You go back when these two teams were playing, Oklahoma City and New Orleans. And Anthony Davis, we've been showing highlights of it, certainly then in the last couple of days, and showing his big plays. When he hit that three at the top of the key, the winning shot at the buzzer, it gave him 41 points for the game. Russell Westbrook had 48 points in that game. It was an unbelievable game. But it was Davis, you talk about away from the basket shooting, hitting that monster three on coming down. He was up, kind of clutched and stayed. It was on the way down, shot it, and made it. And that was the difference in that game. And,
it's the difference between going to the playoffs or not.
One game.
That's it.
You never know. We use the term a lot. And we use it probably more in football because it's 16 games. So there's less games. You say, that one you're going to remember. But it's the same in the other sports because I guarantee you there's 82 games, and I know players will say, well, each one here, there. They look back, and they're going to see there's a lot of what happens in a longer schedule. There's more what-ifs.
Sure.
And that's a huge what-if, a huge game you look back on and say, wow, that one shot dropping, at the end can end up costing you.
Anthony Davis obviously elated going to the playoffs for the first time.
Back go get Golden State. Man, it's an unbelievable win. For us to come out and play the way we play hard, against a tough Spurs team who was battling for something as well. The coach just told us to come out with a lot of energy. That's what we did in the first half. And it's the best part of the game of runs. They came out and made runs, and we knew that we had to sustain their run and make a run ourselves, and that's what we did. And everybody stepped up and played well tonight.
There's nobody, or not many people, that think the Pelicans have a shot in this. According to ESPN Basketball Power Index, 93% chance for the Warriors to win this. Warriors won 3 of the 4 meetings this season, but Anthony Davis didn't play in 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this is what we're interested to see. You got the great shooting guards who are going to bomb threes everywhere.
Yeah.
And you have Anthony Davis with what he can do. It's going to be, I hope anyway, it's a fun series to watch. Certainly you think Golden State is going to move on. You just wonder how many games it's going to be. But I'm definitely excited for this matchup, and I'm very excited to have Anthony Davis in the playoffs.
Exactly. Our first chance to get him to see him on that stage. And Paul sends along a great note just for some historical perspective of how special this season was for Anthony Davis. If you want to use an advanced stat, his PER, his player efficiency rating, the only players who've had a higher PER in an NBA season in the history of this league, 3 guys, pretty good company. Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, LeBron James.
Heard of them all.
Yeah. They've been pretty good at this sport. Yeah, not bad.
What can you say? There aren't enough superlatives to talk about his game. The one thing, and I said it before, and you see it, he gets nicked a little bit.
Yeah, he gets banged up every now and again.
He missed a few games here, a week or 2 there, and, knock on wood, hopefully nothing major going forward. But we do see that every now and then, but we'll see going forward. Right now, he's absolutely money.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit Progressive.com/snapshot. Roger Cossack will join us for the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, 6:30 Eastern this morning. That's about 17 minutes from now. Give us his perspective on the Aaron Hernandez verdict from yesterday. Ryan Ruocco in for Greeny alongside Golic here on Mike and Mike. Now, Golic, I look at the first-round matchups, and I think the thing that excites me most, and remember, you're going to have wall-to-wall coverage here on ESPN. We're going to be carrying as much basketball as you could ever hope for over the next couple of months. But the thing I love is you have 12 of the same teams from last year in the playoffs, yet you have 8 completely new first-round matchups. There's not one repeat. Even though you have 12 same teams from last year, there's not one repeat matchup from last year's postseason. So it's almost like, for me, I compare it to like going to restaurants in New York City where I live, where there's so many great ones. But sometimes your ones are good, and you're like, I'm going to keep going, but you're like, maybe I should branch out a little bit. Okay, we know Spurs-Mavericks is a great first-round series, but Spurs-Clippers is pretty cool. That's a restaurant I think we want to try, and we're going to get to in this postseason. Same thing. We've known that Clippers-Warriors was a great first-round matchup. Well, that wasn't really an option based on how high they were going to be seeded, But I'm interested to see the Warriors play a young star in Anthony Davis.
Well, you look at for the West alone, Warriors and Pelicans, first time meeting in the playoffs. Obviously, we see that with New Orleans getting in. Spurs and Clippers, it's only the second time they're meeting in the playoffs. The Spurs swept the Clippers in 2012 conference semis. Grizzlies and Trailblazers are meeting for the first time in the playoffs. And the Rockets and Mavs for the third time, but the last time was in 2005. So certainly it's been a while. So you're right. While a lot of the same teams, some new matchups just to see where we go. And we always talk about how the West is going to be unbelievably interesting and crazy. And I think the Spurs are that team that everybody thinks, it didn't matter where they were seeded. I'm sure you'd love to be the 2 seed and, and have the home floor the way they would until if they eventually got to Golden State. But, the 6th seed, I don't think anybody questions the fact that they can get out of the West.
I think they are fortunate in some senses, Golic, because if they're the 4 or the 5, then they win their first-round matchup, and they're playing Golden State in the second round. And I think the theory is, even for the Spurs themselves, they are better off playing Golden State later in the playoffs than earlier. Because what's Golden State? They're a jump-shooting team, right? Get some tread on the tires, let those legs get a little heavier. Now, who knows if Golden State's going to have long series these first 2 rounds?
Right.
But I think they are much more vulnerable later in the postseason than they are early in the postseason simply because of the style they play. And San Antonio would benefit from playing them later in the playoffs. And right now, because they're the 6th seed, even though they're not the 2, which they could have been lined up for, the first time they can play the Warriors would be in the conference finals, which is obviously later in the playoffs.
Again, according to the ESPN Basketball Power Index, even though the Spurs are the 6th seed, they have a 60% chance winning this one. They're picked by Warriors 93% over the Pelicans, Grizzlies 55% over the Blazers. That's one of those two. If you look at, you see the Grizzlies are a 5 and Portland's a 4, but the Grizzlies have home court again because of the division win and blah blah blah. Worth getting into. And then the Rockets 54% chance to win over the Mavericks. So those are who the ESPN Basketball Power Index has as your favorites.
And your East matchups: the Hawks play the Nets. You have the Bulls and Bucks, the Raptors and Wizards, and then the Cavs and Celtics are your matchups in the East. Now, Golic, you and I yesterday were at the post-show meeting here for the program, and we are all of a sudden looking up at the TVs, and we see the bottom line crawl flash that the verdict is about to come down in the Aaron Hernandez trial. And so we say, all right, well, we're not going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. We'll sit here and we will watch for it. And eventually, here's exactly what we end up hearing when it comes to Aaron Hernandez and the verdict.
Madam Foreperson, on indictment 2013-983-A, charging the defendant Aaron Hernandez with murder. What say you, Madam Foreperson? Is the defendant not guilty, guilty of murder in the first degree, or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
And I think, Golic, the reaction is a little surprising.
It really is. Let me go through this list just to see where this man was and where he is today. Let me read this. The Connecticut Gatorade Football Player of the Year in 2007. Florida's leading receiver in 2009, a title year, 2008 season. Won the John Mackey Award as the nation's top tight end in 2009. First-team All-American. Fourth-round draft choice in 2010, the Patriots. In 2012, signed that big 5-year extension with the Patriots. From 2010 to 2012, he and Rob Gronkowski together for the tight ends ranked first in every major receiving category, from receptions to receiving yards to receiving touchdowns to first downs. To yesterday, hearing that announcement, he is going to spend the rest of his life in jail without the possibility of parole. Automatic in Massachusetts, no death penalty, so that's the automatic appeal as well. But, I mean, he lived that career on the field, and now this is what's happened to him off the field. And by the way, the prison is what, 3 miles away?
A mile and a half
away from the stadium?
Yeah.
That's where he's going to spend the rest of his life. I mean, it's just stunning. But the verdict was a bit stunning. Now, he was found guilty on 5, but obviously murder 1. The rest were weapons charges. But I think we were all expecting second degree.
Right. Or accessory.
Well, again, we'll hear from Roger Cossack in just a few minutes. I don't think they were talking about,
They didn't have the murder weapon.
The murder weapon,
yeah.
They didn't have a witness, an eyewitness. So there was a whole lot of circumstantial evidence. I thought, and then don't want to make people assuming, but one of the analogies somebody said is about circumstantial evidence, said, when I go to bed at night and there's no snow on the ground, and I wake up in the morning and there's snow on the ground, I didn't see it snow, but I kind of know it snowed. So
it's a good analogy.
That was kind of someone's analogy of, yes, it was circumstantial, but that they were able to connect so many dots that they were able to. Listen, I don't know if there's anybody out there who is not associated with anything with Aaron Hernandez. I thought he was guilty.
Yeah, sure.
I believe
you
did
as
well.
Of course, yeah.
I did. But a lot of people thought it wouldn't be murder one because no eyewitness and no murder weapon. But all the jurors spoke after. I mean, we were even a little surprised that they were all there, all speaking the way they were.
Yeah.
And, they were sure about what they did and sure about their decision and gave some reasons to why they got to their decision that we'll talk to with Roger Kosek. But I thought it was a little surprising.
Yep.
I thought it was a little surprising.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Guys, when you buy your clothes at DXL, you look good. But you feel like a rock star. So if you want to look and feel like you'll find all the brands you love, waist size 38 and up, all in one awesome store. DXL, you're looking good. Right now, select dress shirts are just $49.50 each when you buy 2 or more.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Right now, we want to welcome in Dan Wetzel, outstanding Yahoo columnist, joining us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Dan was there to witness the Aaron Hernandez verdict. Dan, let's deal first from an emotional standpoint. How would you describe the feel in the room when the verdict went down?
With any trial of any level, the verdict is, highly intense, emotional, overwrought. I mean, there's a reason so many movies and TV shows through the years are built around a verdict, right? So it's one of the most intense things you're ever going to experience. You get to a murder case, and one that went on this long, and one that was so hard fought. It was really, really intense. I think the vast majority of the people who were there thought it would come down guilty. So it wasn't necessarily a 50-50 shot, but, anytime you have that, you have one family on one side that is getting a measure of relief, but is still devastated, and it's such an emotional thing where you're coming back to, my son died, my boyfriend died, my cousin died, and then you have the other side that's obviously devastated that their son or their fiance or whatever is going off for life in prison. So it's an emotional thing. Hernandez did his best to try to do what he did all through the trial, to be extremely stoic and even upbeat. But this thing hit him. There's no question. They made him sit down. He no longer had the right to stand as a presumed innocent person. They shackled him right there. He mouthed, you're wrong to the jury. Tried to mouth to his mom and his fiance, stay strong. But there was this one moment where he kind of was leaning back and he just gave out this little exhale. And that was the first time. I was in that courtroom a lot this winter. That was the first time I'd ever seen the reality hit Aaron Hernandez. It was a very brief moment. He tried to stay tough and gave a glare and was still trying to intimidate. But that one moment where he just went, and I'm sure last night it came down like a ton of bricks on him that, you're never getting out of here.
You're right, Dan, because every time you'd see him, he had that stoic look about him, like, this isn't affecting him one way or the other. That's really, that's really painting a picture there. How about Odin Lloyd's family, especially his mom? Their family was there. Talk about their emotion. And also, did Aaron Hernandez and Lloyd's family ever have any eye contact after the verdict?
Not really. Odin Lloyd's family was very into themselves and were hugging and crying at the verdict. He came back about a half hour later for sentencing, and sentencing was automatic, so it's a formality, life without parole. But they do allow victim statements, and this was one of the more amazing moments of the day. Ursula Ward, Odin Lloyd's mother, who was just indomitable throughout this thing and really cast an incredible presence around the court, and spent time over the last 3 months comforting other families that were victims of crimes or alleged crimes. Court officers and people working at the district attorney's office just raved about this woman's grace, faith, dignity in the face of all this stuff. She got up and gave one of the most amazing witness statements I've ever seen. And this is an immigrant. This is somewhat of a, I want to say it's in the best possible way, but somewhat of a simple woman, just wants to raise her family. She got up very slowly, very clearly, with incredible passion, talked about her son and the praise for her son, and at the end said she forgave everybody involved in her son's death, and then prayed and hoped everyone else would do the same. It was a moment of, again, just incredible, decency in a case that is so depraved. And, Hernandez never reacts to it, never sort of says anything, never acknowledges the absolution that she provides. And, I can't even imagine being that good of a person in that moment to be able to do that. But Ursula Ward did that. And if you can watch her speech, on the internet. And, she taught a lot of lessons in grace yesterday that I don't think anyone was expecting.
But, we are going to play that for our audience in just a couple of minutes, because that was probably one of the more powerful moments I've ever seen in a courtroom. We're talking with the Yahoo columnist Dan Wetzel on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Dan, I'm curious. I don't know the way that this works, but when she gave that statement, was Aaron Hernandez still in the courtroom? Were there members of his family who were still there as she spoke and actually asked for the forgiveness of him?
She just gave him the forgiveness. She didn't, and asked. Yeah, she asked everyone else to give it.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
No, you're right. He was there. He had to sit and listen to it all, and it's emotional. It's emotional stuff, and that's the point of it. He never reacted to it. He was back to trying to be a tough guy and not care at that point. But there's no way he didn't hear it. I mean, he's sitting right there looking at her. She's feet away. She never looked at him. None of Odin Lloyd's family even just acknowledged him. They just got up there. They gave their speech. They looked at the judge. They've made all these eloquent statements, and then just kind of ignored him. So he had to listen. His family was gone. Shayana Jenkins, his fiancée, who's obviously a critical witness, and a lot of people question her role in this, was not present. She had left with Hernandez's mom right after the verdict. They did not stay around for sentencing.
Dan, I'll be interested in your view from being there to mine watching it. When I was watching this go on, I kept thinking to myself, it's unbelievable how everything is pointing to him, and I thought he was guilty of it, but we would have legal analysts, including Roger Cossack on this show and many other shows, saying from the legal side he doesn't think that Hernandez is going to be found guilty because no motive, no murder weapon, no witness. So he said from the legal side he didn't think that was going to happen, while from someone like me who has no legal background thought common sense and the circumstantial evidence was enough. You were there that whole time. When that verdict was about to get read, what was your thought? Were you sure one way or the other?
Well, I was there a lot of time. I wasn't there every day, mercifully, because there's some boring testimony in there. But even the jury acknowledged that. I love Roger Cossack. We worked the Sandusky trial together. He's the best. But I think if you were there was a different element than if you were not. I did not. I'm an opinion columnist, so I could flat out come out and say, look, he's going to be found guilty. I think he's guilty. I thought all along he was guilty. I was absolutely certain yesterday he'd be found guilty at this stage of the evidence. Every other reporter, every other person in that courtroom that I knew that can't give their opinion because they're just, supposed to be right down the middle, everyone thought he was going to be found guilty. I think you had to sit there and see the jury how they paid attention, who they were. Obviously, you're not talking to them, but just seeing the effort that they put in, you just felt like this was it. And the way that the case was built and the way it went down, at the end, there was nothing left for the defense to argue. They got boxed in a couple spots where, at the end, it was over. Obviously, people are saying, oh, they admitted he was there. They had to admit he was there. It was over at that point. They had no exculpatory evidence. They had no reasonable counter-argument. They had no alibi or anything like that. They were down to claiming this crazy PCP defense that made no sense and basically hoping that all they really had at the end was hoping the jury would say, I don't think he did it because there's no motive and it doesn't make sense that someone would just, with that kind of contract and that kind of life, would just kill somebody. And that's what makes the story so fascinating, because why the heck would Aaron Hernandez do that? But that was it. They had gotten boxed in every single way. And, I think like the testimony of Robert Kraft, which was, I'm not sure, really appreciated by some of the outs if you weren't there. But Kraft really was significant in hammering Hernandez. He boxed him in two ways by saying Hernandez provided an alibi. I was at a club, which was clearly not true because we knew he had been with a live Odin Lloyd at about 3:20 in the morning. And he wasn't at a club. And so now he changed his story. And then B, Kraft said Hernandez told him, I was at a club at the time of the murder. At the time he told him that, nobody knew the time of the murder. The police hadn't been able to forensically put together anything. And I remember a jury yesterday said, how the heck did he know? The only way you know the time of the murder is if you're the murderer. And a lot of that stuff, I remember talking about how big I thought Kraft was at that time. And I think that was right, because I think they really listened to that and looked at this and said, this guy is totally lying all the way.
Dan, really good perspective. Enjoyed your column as well. Thanks so much for the time this morning.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys. Always appreciate it.
That's Dan Wetzel, Yahoo columnist, joining us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. He just brought up the reason for that comment from the juror we played earlier, Golic, about, well, he had mentioned the time of the murder, over a 3-month trial, at no point was the time of the murder proven. So how did you even know?
How did you know? Yeah. Didn't go well. Just one other thing that didn't go too well for him in that trial.
No, that's right. And the comments Dan brings up from Odin Lloyd's mother,
Ursula Ward, wow.
It is absolutely fantastic. You have to hear it, and you will. The most powerful moment in the courtroom yesterday.
Yeah, and again, the sentencing is automatic. So, but the family, Odin Lloyd's family, still got a chance to talk to the judge, about lost son, brother, whatever the relationship was, and it was very emotional. And Odin Lloyd's mother, Ursula Ward, I was just amazed that she had the power to say what she said.
Take a listen.
We wear purple in this courtroom every day because it's my son's favorite color. I forgive the hands of the people that had a hand in my son's murder, either before or after. And I pray and hope that someday everyone out there will forgive them also. May God continue to bless us. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just going to say this. I was just amazed when I heard that. Now, my religion, I think, as most religions, do preach forgiveness, right?
Yep.
But I'll say right now, there is no possible way I could have stood up there after that trial, after what went on in that trial, and said, I forgive him. There is not a chance I could have. Now, maybe in time, I would have, and I know it's been a while since the actual act went on, but now you had it all laid out in front of you. She's a better person than I am. There's no doubt about it. Because, as I said, in time, maybe I could have. But listen, I'm going to sit here and tell the truth. For me, there would be one outcome I would want, and it's not life in jail, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
That would be me. There's no way I could have forgiven right there like she did, and she's better for it, for being able to do that. And like I said, maybe over a period of time I could have gotten to that, but certainly not at that point. It sent a chill down my spine when I heard her say that and say, wow, what a person to be able to do that. There's just no way I could have. There would have been nothing but hate and vengeance in my entire being for anybody that had a hand in killing my child. Right. I was amazed by her, and I guess maybe, a little looking at myself, maybe a little concern for myself that I still would have had that. She could be that good, and I could just be thinking about nothing, but you know exactly what I'm thinking about as far as revenge for what happened to one of my kids. So that really, really, really struck me.
It just gave me chills again, listening to it right
incredible.
Now. And to think, you just had your child taken away from you. You just had it confirmed, in case you didn't know already, that this man who's feet from you is the reason your child was taken from you. You now have that confirmation that he was taken away from you by Aaron Hernandez. And you are going to, in front of everybody there, including Aaron Hernandez himself, say that you forgive him and you hope someday others will too. That takes a level of decency and humanity that I didn't know existed. And she showed it to us on a very public stage. That was an incredible moment of grace, and it showed a trait that I agree, Golic. I don't think what you just said about yourself, I think you're in the vast, vast majority. People are going to react and say, I want one thing when it comes to Aaron Hernandez. If they have someone they love taken away by him, she is in the slim minority, but what a shining moment for her there.
Yeah, and I think what adds to it is the fact that there's one thing. Now, during the trial, you don't want anybody saying they feel remorse because they're trying to be found not guilty of the charge. But also, there was just no emotion from him at all. And nothing. Now, I don't know if you were expecting it right there, but we know how he was for the entire trial. Again, while you're on trial and you're trying to get off from these charges, you're not going to act like you're remorseful because you want to try to say, I didn't do it. But I don't know what else to say. I was stunned when I heard it. I'm stunned when I hear it again. I think a lot of people just looking at the way Aaron Hernandez carried himself. You heard Dan Wetzel say just kind of, does the word smug, is that a word?
Sure, no,
arrogant?
I think that's appropriate. I mean, trying to be a tough guy.
Trying to be a tough guy, the way he painted that picture, and for her to walk up just moments after he's found guilty of killing her son, for her to be able to say that, I don't know what to say except what a wonderful person she is, and I wish I had some of that strength, because the only strength I would want is something far, far different to do to him.
And to your point about the emotion and the lack of it when it comes to Aaron Hernandez, Brendan Stossel tweets at us, if I'm convicted of murder and didn't do it, no matter how tough I am or want to seem, there's no way I don't express my innocence in that moment.
Listen, I agree. And everybody's different. Everybody expresses it differently. But I think any natural person would think that. If you didn't, if you don't do something, you're screaming from the mountaintops, I didn't do this. And then if you're still found guilty from it, you would think there'd be an unbelievable amount of emotion. As I said, everybody's different. You certainly didn't get any of that, though Dan Wetzel really painted, even though it a small picture, but he said that one moment. And a lot of when we were watching, once Aaron Hernandez sat down and he sat back, his face was kind of blocked. So when we were our whole crew here was watching, you couldn't really see a lot of his reaction. But Dan was there, and he said at one point when he saw Aaron Hernandez kind of look up and just kind of exhale, like maybe there he realized what the hell was going on.
I would simply say that I'm in great pain, that I've suffered significant injury, and those were caused by the police.
Now it's one of your own. It's something that's got the players' antennas significantly raised.
Should he have been there? Should he not? That time of night, this late in the season, that's another discussion. The bottom line is now you could have potentially altered the postseason for Atlanta. Sefolosha is that important to what they're doing on the court.
Well, some of the sounds of the last couple of days in regard to Thabo Sefolosha, who is out for the entire postseason after an incident with police outside a New York City nightclub last week. And we will get perspective on that right now from Michelle Roberts, the executive director of the NBA Players Association, joining us via the Subway Fresh Take hotline. Michelle, right now, as it stands, what's the Players Association stance as to the events of the night Thabo Sefolosha had his leg broken?
Good morning, guys. Right now, the Players Association is in the process of gathering facts. None of us, of course, was present. What we want to know is what happened and what justification, if any, exists for what happened to our players. And so within minutes of learning about what did occur, dispatched our lawyers, our security team to the police department, to the court building, to make sure initially that our guys were okay and that they were being treated appropriately. But since then have been identifying witnesses, trying to find, obviously we've seen the footage that TMZ released, but you may have noticed if you've seen it yourself that other people were on the scene with personal phones filming what they saw, trying to locate some of that footage, essentially trying to find out what happened, because if in fact the treatment of our guys was inappropriate and unsubstantiated, then we want to see some consequences. So we're in a fact-gathering mode at this point.
So certainly from that side of it, you find out some facts and you can make a decision one way or the other on what you gather. As far as what can happen from this, there's talk that teams can provide security for players if they go out and other avenues as well. Is there talk amongst players, or would you bring it up to use more things like this, or should that not be a part of this discussion, or just things regarding players' safety when they're out?
Well, folks should know that issues of security and player safety are not new. This is not something that people have not, at the union and the league have not, and teams, of course, as well, have not addressed. The guys have been asked, and they have been vigilant when they do go outside of the team activities, and so that it hasn't changed necessarily. Clearly, people are more sensitive because of what happened to both these guys and to Chris. So there may be a bit of an uptick in terms of security, but you should know, if you don't, that security has been an ongoing concern for some time now.
Talking with Michelle Roberts, the Executive Director of the NBA Players Association, joining us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Michelle, I'm curious, have you, as you're in this fact-finding time when it comes to what happened the other night, have you gotten a chance to speak with Dabo himself about what went on?
I have, and I'm in my old life, I was a lawyer, so I respect the concept of not inquiring about the specific facts when someone is in the midst of a criminal investigation. So, he's represented by counsel, represented by very good counsel, I might add, and so I don't want to invade the attorney-client privilege, but I have spoken with him principally to make sure he's okay. But beyond confirming that, I've deliberately stayed away from inquiring of him about what happened. I don't need necessarily at this point to have him utter to me the words describing what happened. It's been because of the reasons I just stated, but I'm actually as interested in finding out what happened from other people who were there.
So as this is an ongoing investigation, we'll see what facts come out as time goes on. A couple other issues to talk about as well. Again, Michelle Roberts, Executive Director of the NBPA. The talk about the playoffs and the talk about, tanking comes up every year, and how teams get in the playoffs, how teams are looking to get that top pick in the draft. Are you satisfied, or do you want to see a change in the playoff format?
Look, on the issue of tanking, Mike, I got to tell you, I watched the Atlanta-New York game, and to the extent I have been of the view that our guys are competitive and play to win, that game in and of itself suggests to me that we need to not, if we're going to talk about tanking, let's not talk about players deliberately losing games, because I saw some really great efforts by teams in the last few weeks, last few months, indeed last night, who had nothing to gain in the playoffs, just good, hard basketball. So, we can talk about whether or not that teams are being put together in a way that doesn't allow them to be competitive, but to suggest that players are deliberately not winning games, I really take issue with. I'm excited about the playoffs. I do think that, it's everyone has a team that they wished could have gotten in that didn't get in. I think it's frankly somewhat exciting to see people getting in at the last minute. The tension even within an hour and a half of the season ending is to me as a fan exciting. Sure, there's a way to improve how we do these things. I'm for one not adverse to the idea that the best teams in terms of their win-loss record should be the teams that get in. But as I say, we're going to have an exciting playoff, and I look forward to it.
Well, let me just be clear, and I've said this many a time. When I talk about tanking, I always say it is not at all on the players. It is completely who management decides to put on the court. Players are on the court trying to win. I guess I've said it so much I just assume people know I mean that when I say tanking. But because players, they have nothing to gain or lose by that. They're always going to play hard on the court. So I definitely agree with you on that.
On the same page.
Yep. So, Michelle, when it comes to, and we saw another player from Duke, the third freshman we've seen declare for the NBA draft yesterday, and Tyus Jones, who had obviously just a wonderful NCAA tournament. He's going to enter the NBA draft. What's your stance right now on one-and-dones with college players going to the pros?
As I say, I wasn't in the room when the decision was made to even implement the one-and-done rule. But I will say that if I were in the room, I would undoubtedly have been fiercely opposed to it. I don't understand. I have opinions, but I don't buy into the notion that when it comes to basketball, we need to somehow create a barrier for talented people who are otherwise NBA ready to come in and start playing the game. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever from the professional side. And so I'm not happy with it. I'm delighted that these three young men who, in my view, and I think in the view of everyone listening to this program, are absolutely ready to come in and start competing. And so the notion of us increasing the barrier is not something that I embrace. If you're not ready, then you won't be drafted. And if you are ready, then come on in. The good basketball players should be able to come in, compete, and make a living. We all know that the shelf life of these players is and can be limited. Not everyone's going to be blessed with Kevin Garnett's tenure. And so to the extent these guys can come in and be able to professionally earn a living, and they're ready. Again, I think we do a pretty good job of screening those people who aren't NBA ready. There are exceptions, but overall, we do a pretty good job. These guys are ready. I welcome them into the game, and I welcome them into our union.
Again, it was safe to say more than a dozen players, freshmen, have declared for the NBA draft so far this year. And starting next year, the players get to vote on the awards for themselves. They're voting for each other. Your thoughts on that?
Actually, we're doing it right now. And you're talking about the Players' Choice Awards. It was a bit of a drumbeat. I mean, every now and again, I'd read about some players saying that, and then as we visited the teams, there were more and more players that said, we don't mind that the media gets to vote, but gee, why can't we vote? And I didn't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. So we decided to do it. The guys are really excited. I think the fans are pretty excited about it. It's not going to supplement or supplant the other awards, but it's an interesting addition to the conversation about the quality of the players each season. So I think it's going to be fun.
Michelle, thank you for your time this morning. Enjoy the postseason. Hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Mike and Mike.
Charles Barkley, TNT analyst, joining us now on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Charles, before we get into the NBA playoffs beginning and what's coming up in that venue, how about what we just played and what we all saw yesterday with Ursula Ward, Odin Lloyd's mother, addressing the courtroom in front of Aaron Hernandez, knowing that he's now been convicted of killing her son, and asking for eventually everybody there to forgive Aaron Hernandez the way that she has. What did you make of that?
Well, clearly she's an amazing woman. She's just an amazing woman to have that type of mentality. But there were no winners yesterday. There was a bunch of losers. You got a young guy who's dead. You got one young guy who's going to prison for life. He's got a kid. A mother's going to lose a son. I mean, there were no winners yesterday. We all lost. And I felt bad because, I look at everybody who play professional sports as a friend of mine, to be honest with you, because we're all in the same fraternity. I call it the greatest fraternity in the world. I remember when Dale Earnhardt Jr. died, I was having dinner with some friends, and I started crying. They're like, why are you crying? You don't know Dale Earnhardt. I said, I don't, but he's part of my fraternity. Because you play sports, you're part of my family. I feel like that. So I lost a member of my family going to prison for the rest of his life yesterday. But there were no winners. We all lost, and I feel bad for everybody involved.
It's a great point. It's a great point that there were no winners. And to stay on the legal side of it, and certainly a lesser situation, or nobody lost their life, but we talk about the basketball players, Copeland, who got stabbed, Cephaloshu, who ended up getting the broken leg and out for the season. How about that situation with wherever you want to go, from players being out at 4 in the morning on the night of a game to Cephaloshu getting arrested and then getting taken down by the police and breaking a leg? Just your general thoughts on that situation and where you think it goes.
Well, I never tell guys how to live their life. I've never been to a club and there was nobody there. I never been to a casino and there was nobody there. So whatever you do in your free time, that's fine. You know, our job's not like Mike, I listen to you a lot. You NFL players, y'all get up and go to practice every morning. Y'all go to practice early in the day. Most NBA teams don't have practice the day of a game, so you could sleep technically all day. So whatever you want to do in your spare time, that's on you. I just think that, listen, it was an awful situation. 2 people got stabbed. You bring in that type of intensity. You bring in cops. You bring in guys fighting. Obviously, somebody was fighting. Bad stuff is going to happen. I mean, there's no good can happen in that situation. And we got to be careful with the cops. I mean, obviously they're under attack right now. But, man, I think most cops are good people who want to do the right thing. They really want to do the right thing. But when you bring in knives, guns, adrenaline, and everybody loves to play Monday morning quarterback. And my favorite saying is, you know why they play Monday morning quarterback? Because they don't have the stones to play on Sunday when the game goes on. Man, when you bring in guns, knives, adrenaline, pressure, tension, there's going to be some mistakes made at some time. But I think the one thing we got to do, man, we can't just say all cops are bad, because they're all out there trying to bust their hump, to be honest with you.
It's a great point. Charles Barkley joining us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Now, Charles, on the court last night, we had a couple dramatic finishes that end up changing the playoff landscape a little bit. What did it say to you that New Orleans was able to win that game against a Spurs team that was playing hard and trying to win its 12th straight and trying to get that 2 seed?
Well, I think that was it's so funny. You guys make me get up early in the morning to go back and look at Sports Center, check out some of the early games, because I really didn't do anything but watch hockey last night.
Yeah.
So, I love the hockey playoffs. So I watched hockey last night, so I had to get up early this morning and go and see everything that happened. I was kind of surprised the Pelicans won. Obviously, they got Anthony Davis, who's man, he's special. He's very special. He's going to be the best player in the NBA in the next 2 to 3 years when LeBron passes the torch. He's just special. But I was surprised because it put a lot of pressure on the Spurs. But they tried as hard as they could, apparently. But to go from 2 to 6, now they don't get any rounds at home. I think the most interesting thing is going to be the MVP thing, because I've said all along, as much as I like Steph Curry, and he should be the favorite, I thought if James Harden could get the Rockets to the 2nd spot, or even the 3rd spot, I thought he should get serious consideration, considering the year he's had and all the injuries to Dwight. So I think that's the only thing. And he had another triple-double. So I think Steph Curry should win it, maybe win it. But, man, I think what James Harden has done this year has been amazing.
Yeah, I had said a couple weeks ago my vote would be for Harden, and I don't see a whole lot to change it. I think Steph's going to win it as well. But what Harden done has been incredible. Well, we have the playoffs certainly to talk about, because the first round lasts for about a year and a half. But as far as Anthony Davis, and I guess now making the playoffs, I guess, though, as I said, the big question for New Orleans down the road is, what do we have to do to make Anthony Davis want to stay in New Orleans? And I would imagine being in the playoffs this year certainly helps. But is that obviously the ultimate goal of New Orleans, and any more they can do to try and secure that?
Well, they're getting better. Money's done a fantastic job. They have gotten better every year. They probably have a better record this year if Drew Holiday had played more. He's been out a bunch of games. But they're getting better. They're a young team. Mike, the biggest problem we got in sports, not just in the NBA, across the board, man, fans are so impatient now. I mean, New Orleans has gotten better every single year. Anthony Davis has missed a bunch of games waiting on his body to mature. But listen, it's going to be up to Anthony. He's going to be the best player in the world in the next 2 to 3 years. And listen, I hate all these guys who quote unquote want to play in big major markets. I would have loved to play my entire career in one city. There's no reason you have to play in New York or L.A. I mean, Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and all those guys, they did all right. Tim Duncan, they did all right playing in different cities. But listen, I'm looking forward to the playoffs because, to be honest with you, I got no idea who's going to win the championship. I don't want to be one of those guys like I know who's going to win, because I think that the number one seeds in the East Conference have some flaws. I think they're very good teams, but I think they have some flaws. I think they're very small teams. This is nothing personal. I've always said I don't like jump shooting teams. I think Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, they're the best backcourt in the NBA. But I think you can beat them up down low and kill them on the offensive boards. And I think the same thing about the Atlanta Hawks. But I got no idea who's going to win the world championship, especially I would have probably said the Spurs in the West if they had been the number 2 seed. But now I have no idea what's going to happen in the West. And I actually think Chicago and Cleveland are the 2 best teams in the East and look like they're going to play in the second round of the playoffs.
Talking with Charles Barkley on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Charles, how much of a chance do you give Chicago at this point to beat Cleveland?
I think that they got a chance. I do. I think they got a chance because I think I think the one thing that's going to help them, and I agree with you, Golic, the first round of the playoffs is going to last like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of room for time for Derek to keep getting healthy. If they could get all their pieces together, I think the injury to Rose and the injury to Butler and all those guys, Mirotic has been playing fantastic. He almost probably stole the Rookie of the Year. He's not going to win it, but he's probably made the greatest run for Rookie of the Year in the last month. But they have the most depth of all the Eastern Conference teams, to be honest with you. But don't sleep on the Toronto Raptors. They won the regular season series against the Atlanta Hawks, and they're supposed to meet in the second round of the playoffs. But like I say, I got no idea. I try to be honest and straight shooter, but I got no idea who's going to win the World Championship this year.
Well, we know one team that's not. That's Oklahoma City. They have the top scorer in Russell Westbrook, but he'll be sitting at home. And now we see articles about the evaluation of Scott Brooks. Should he be back? What's your thought on that situation? What he's done, and should he be looked at should he be back on this team next year, coaching this team?
I think it's a joke that a guy could lose the MVP and almost make the playoffs, and his job is on the line. Now, let me preface that. I think most people know Scott Brooks lived with me for a minute when he played with the Sixers, so clearly I'm a little biased. But let me say this. For a guy all the injuries they've had the last year, they lost the MVP really for the whole season. Russell Westbrook, I forget how many games he's missed. To think that those guys even had a chance going into, and actually, listen, they probably, I think 99.9% of the people in the world thought going into last night they were going to make the playoffs.
Right. Yep.
I mean, 'cause we talked about this. We worked Tuesday night, and I was like, I don't see any way the Pelicans can beat. I said, you obviously know Oklahoma's going to beat Minnesota, but I don't see how the Pelicans can beat the Spurs because the Spurs don't want to be 6, they want to be 2. And I think one game, 24 hours ago, I think everybody thought they were going to make the playoffs. So in my opinion, Scott's job should not be in jeopardy. Let me tell you something. If those guys could ever get everybody healthy, if they could get Westbrook, Durant healthy, to go with Cantor, Steven Allen, that McCary kid, Dion Wade, if they could get their whole team together, I personally think they would be the best team in the Western Conference if they could get everybody healthy. Because I like McGarry, I love Cantor, I love Ibaka. If they could ever get their 5 guys together for a whole season, I think they would be the team to beat in the entire NBA.
All right, I'm going to finish on a hockey question. Since you watched hockey last night, the game was Nashville up 3-0 on their home ice and ended up losing in double overtime to Chicago. So a question here. Chicago, Corey Crawford, the goalie, gives up 3 goals on 12 shots. He's been the man for him all year.
Yes.
Obviously, been the guy for him for a while. Let me tell you this. So they go up 3-0. And
we're not great friends, but I became friends with Patrick Kane in the last couple of years. So I'm a pseudo Blackhawks fan, and I was glad to see him back last night. So I watched the Capitals game, the Islanders game first, and I'm pulling for Ovechkin so he can get off the list that I'm on, never won anything. So I root for Ovechkin. So I watched that game, and they get mauled by Tavares and the Islanders. So then I started watching my Blackhawks. And I was like, oh, my good. But let me tell you something. That coach, when he pulled Crawford, I was like, oh, my goodness. It's either going to work or he's going to be done for the series. And the best analyst on television is Barry Melrose. Mm-hmm. He is, to me, I can listen to Barry Melrose. The only difference between me and Melrose and NBA analysts, they're not whiny little girls like we got. Yeah. They don't have players crying and we talk bad about them and agents call and say, why you said it's about my players. I could listen to Barry Melrose talk about hockey because he's a straight shooter. But I tell you what, I do disagree with him about keeping that backup goalie in there. Because if you have to go back, because if he doesn't play, if you start losing, I don't know if you can go back to him. So I do, like I say, Barry know a lot more about hockey than me, but I disagree with staying with the backup goalie.
I agree with you, and that Scott Darling came in and had 42 saves. I would put Crawford back in between the pipes as well. We'll see what happens. A great win for them. Nashville's got to be thrown up all over themselves after losing that one. But a lot of fun. Charles, thanks again. Obviously,
thank you, Charles.
Hey, man, thank you guys for having me. I cannot wait for Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Right now, we get a chance to chat with a man who's at the helm of the Houston Rockets, who are the 2 seed in a very competitive Western Conference. Won their game last night. A couple other things happened, and they end up the 2 seed despite a whole lot of injuries, including one of their 2 stars, Dwight Howard, for a huge chunk of the season, and that is Kevin McHale joining us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Good morning, Coach, and congrats on clinching that 2 seed last night.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
As far as the 2 seed, we're talking about the seeds with San Antonio losing. They go to the 6 seed. We talk about, them playing the Clippers instead of possibly being the 2 like you are and playing Dallas. With the West also talking about how deep it is, does it really matter to you or to these teams what the seed is in the West?
I think you play all season long to get in the playoffs, and the West is so competitive that I'm not sure it really matters where you're seated. I mean, it's nice to have home court, and know that if you advance, you have home court in the second round. But it's just so competitive that Dallas is going to be a tough out. Rick's a great coach up there, ex-teammate of mine, and know him real well, and know their team, and everybody in play is really good. I mean, you look at all the teams that won over 50 games in the West, and it's just loaded. So, yeah, you play hard, and I'm glad the guys were rewarded with getting the 2nd seed and winning the division because they played hard. Our players, we had a lot of different injuries. A lot of guys came and went in the lineup, and the one constant was they went out there and they battled every single night. So it's nice to let them get the 2nd seed and have a little bit of a feel good for a day, but today we're getting back in the gym and we're preparing for Dallas, and all that feel good stuff goes away because you have a tough task at hand, which is winning series in the West.
Well, and it starts Saturday, 9:30 Eastern on ESPN. Game 1 of that series between the 2 seed Rockets and the 7 seed Mavericks. Now, Coach, I know last year you guys felt like if you were going to have success in the postseason this year, you needed to improve defensively. You certainly did that in the regular season. I know your GM likes efficiency stats. Well, you were 6th in defensive efficiency this year. Do you think you've gotten to where you need to be defensively to go on a long postseason run?
Well, it may have been 6, but it felt like 26. Look at defense in our league is that you've got to come out every single night and be solid. Guys make tough shots. I mean, we lost the game up in Toronto, and they had a couple guys just making shots you can't guard. You know what I mean? The guys making fadeaways. The Rosen's making one-legged shots. But great offenses beat always in the NBA will beat great defense. I mean, but that being said, we had to get better defensively. One of our toughest things we had all year long was to rebound the ball. Our first shot defense, I thought was really good this year. The problem is we're giving up a lot of second and third shots just because, Dwight was out. We had to go small so many times. We had so many different lineups. But I like our defense. I just think we had to improve in that area, and we did. We came out and we got better. But that being said, they don't keep stops up on the scoreboard. Like they don't have, you don't get a point for a stop. You get points for scoring the ball. Your defense has got to be solid, but you also got to complement that with offense and get out there and get after it. So it's both sides of the ball. But we really spent a lot of time on our defense, and my assistant coach, J.B. Bickerstaff, did a great job, and he really, we worked a lot on our defense, and it did pay off. And I like the way we defend most nights. There are some nights in the league, like I said, LeBron or those special players get hot, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just, hate to say it, but it's actually fun to watch. It's not when you're sitting there, but having played for so long and gotten through those phases, it's about the combination of your offense and your defense, and we've got to be solid moving forward in the playoffs.
Rockets head coach Kevin McHale joining us. Mike and Ryan Ruocco in for Greeny. You mentioned about Dwight and missing some time. Dwight's played in 9 of the last 12 games, coming back from injuries, averaging about 22 minutes a game. Where is he as far as getting where he needs to be to get this team in their full chemistry to play at top efficiency in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think he's getting better all the time. We started him off really slow, and we brought him back after the latest setback. He took 2 months off. He was getting 15, 16 minutes a game, just trying to let him get acclimated to, the NBA game. And, it's funny because everybody thinks, he's played 10 years in the league. He'll step in the NBA and, at the end of the season and catch a rhythm right away. Unless you're playing NBA basketball, it's hard to get a rhythm. The speed and just the size and the speed and how the game is played, you've got to get some time under your belt. So I thought it was really important that Dwight get 10, 12 games coming down the stretch here. And last night was, I thought, the first time I saw Dwight play at the bouncy level where he was making second and third bounces on the ball, second and third jumps, going up and blocking shots, coming from the weak side, being able to shuffle over and then get down and then get up and block a shot. And that all happens, boom. You've got to be able to, as a big, go from the weak side to the strong side and then get off your feet. If you miss it, get it, go back up and get the rebound. There's so many double jumping and everything. And, Mike, I'm sure it's like people say, boy, I'm a big guy. I'd play on the defensive line in the NFL. The first time they saw the size and strength of those guys, they would just start crying. It's just because it's so different. For Dwight, I think Dwight's getting close to where he needs to be. He's going to be as good as he can for us. He's really locked in and doing everything he needs to do therapy-wise. But, would he be as good as if he played the last 40 games, averaging 35 minutes a game? No, because he's not at that level yet. But I think he's getting closer to the Dwight Howard that we need him to be for us. That's full.
Coach, real quick before we let you run, I wanted to get your take on Paul Pierce's comments. I don't know if you saw the interview, but did an interview with our Jackie McMullen and basically, amongst other things, said he thinks this generation of younger players, they don't have the thirst to be great the way that maybe his generation does, that it's hard to push them. They don't necessarily listen the same way, and he is even questioning his own guys, Bradley Beal and John Wall, about whether they want to be great or just good. You've been through a few generations now in this league as a player, as a front office executive, as a coach. Do you see that with your players today?
It's different. I think that they do want to be great. I think that their approach to it's a little bit different. I think how they were coached growing up was a little bit different, with the AAU. And then, a lot of these guys, they've gone to 3 different high schools. The coach yells at them one day and they go to the new high school the next year, It's different. I mean, you've got to be able to get with the guys, spend some time with them. I think they all want it. I just don't know if they know what it takes sometimes. And then you've got to really, and honestly, there's nothing like, the teacher that teaches the most in this league is failure. So all of a sudden you go out and you play 3 or 4 good games, you're a young guy, you step on the floor and you think, okay, I got to go, and I figured this league out. Then you just get hammered by some guy and some team, and it humbles you. And I think a lot of these guys need to go through that. But I do believe deep down they really want to be great. I think a lot of like our generation of guys, the money wasn't what it was at. It was just really a burning desire to be really good. And it came out in your play and stuff. I do think they all have that. It's just a little bit different. I just think they were a little bit more coddled in coaching and how they were brought up as far as inside of the sports world. But it's in there, and you just got to figure out different ways to light the fire from each guy. Whereas before, you used to be able to walk in and just curse the room out and everybody be ready to play. Now you got to individually go up here. How you doing? Are you ready? And it's just there's more of that. That's just the truth, And a lot of times with these guys, you have an agenda and you talk to the guys and you got to listen to them, and then we have a lot of interaction on our team. But you've got to get them over to your side and say, hey, we're doing it this way. I know you want to do it that way, and boy, that's a great way to do it. But we're not going to do it that way right now. Let's try it this way. And you just got to get them going. You got to get them all on the same page. It's just a little bit different. But I do believe deep down guys want to win. I do believe deep down guys want to be really, really good. It's just how they get there and how that fire burns is really different each guy.
Well, Coach, fires burn nicely for your Rockets this year. The 2 seed going into the playoffs. Game 1 against the Mavericks, 9:30 Eastern on ESPN Saturday night. We will be watching. Best of luck in this postseason.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, guys. Take care. Thank you.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNRadio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
Throw to the plate, safe at the plate!
Right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio.
Golic AutoZone does all these cool things to help customers get in the zone.
Sure do. They charge your battery for free. They even loan tools free for bigger jobs.
Right, but what if your zone is something else? Like, what if your zone is winning the ultimate Mike and Mike experience, 4 days and 3 nights in L.A. for the ESPYs?
AutoZone is helping us get you there. It's the Mike and Mike experience at the ESPY Sweepstakes, presented by AutoZone. All the details are at ESPNRadio.com/Mike's ESPY contest.
Cool.
It's called The Zone. AutoZone's going to help get you there.
Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.